today. Welcome to my live stream. Execution mandate: how to stop planning and start doing. If this is your first time joining the live stream, let me know in the comments. Tell me where you're joining me from, and thank you for your time. I don't take that lightly. Thank you for joining me today. The execution mandate: how to stop planning and start doing. The 3S friction filter, the blueprint of 3, and the D.A.R.E protocol. That's what we're talking about today. By the way, did you participate in the 7-day sprint challenge that just ended? If you didn't, go to my handle and follow through for 7 days, where we took action daily to help us hack procrastination. If you did, let me know how it helped you to be a better person who executes, a better professional who executes, right? So on a scale of 1 to 10, we are taking a quick survey. On a scale of 1 to 10, how much of a professional doer versus a professional planner are you versus a relentless doer? On a scale of 1 to 10, how much of a professional planner are you on a scale of 1 to 10? So drop your results, drop your numbers in the comments. Let's see that. Okay, this is a no judgment zone. We're all here to grow. Okay, so on a scale of 1 to 10, how much of a professional planner are you versus a relentless doer? So right now, your unexecuted ideas is costing you more than your bad investments. Your unexecuted ideas is costing you much more than your bad investments. Most professionals think they have a time problem, but in an age of information barrage, you actually have an attention architecture problem. So it's not a time management problem per se, it's an attention architecture problem. And previously I talked about choice architecture, designing your environment in such a way that it powers deep focus for you. Okay, so you have planned steps 1, 2, and 3 version of your vision, but while you are planning, someone else is doing. While you are planning, someone else is doing. Those are the relentless doers. While you are planning, being a professional planner, someone else is doing, being a relentless doer. Yes, so I am Elizabeth Omorere, the Productivity Strategist, and today we are ending that cycle of productive procrastination. We are ending that cycle of productive procrastination. Welcome to the execution mandate. Today, we are going to show you how to stop planning and how to start doing. Remember that this is broken down into 3 phases. We are going to be focusing on the 3S friction filter, the blueprint of 3, and the D.A.R.E protocol, D.A.R.E. Okay? Yes, so the 3S friction filter, that's where we're going to treat systemic friction, like likened to clear physical path. To move a chair, if you have to move a chair to start, you won't start. The blueprint of 3, pardon me, the blueprint of 3 talks about the protection of your peace. With the barrage of information that we are saddled with today, you have to protect your focus, your attention, your time. Yes. And then the third is the D.A.R.E protocol, D.A.R.E, which is teaching how to reduce the steps. So if you can't do it in 5 minutes, you can do it in 3. There is no excuse, and we are lowering the activation energy. So the action plan today is do one task immediately after. Yes, okay. So there's an opening affirmation I want you all to take, and it goes: I do not need to see the whole staircase to take the first step. I, Elizabeth, so you put your name, do not need to see the whole staircase before I take the first step. Small progress is still progress. I am enough. What is enough? Okay. So I, Elizabeth, do not need to see the whole staircase to take the first step. Small progress is still progress. I am enough and my effort is enough. Thank you for joining me. Thank you all for joining me today. Welcome to the live stream, and we're talking about the execution mandate, how to stop planning and start doing, focusing on three key pillars: the 3S friction filter, the blueprint of three, and the D.A.R.E protocol. So the execution gap isn't a lack of talent, right? It's usually a breakdown in the transition from high level cognition, which is the planning phase, to your motor based output, which is when you actually put in the work. So, research in organizational psychology suggests that 70% of strategic failures are due to poor execution rather than poor vision. Did you get that? 70% of strategic failures are due to poor execution rather than poor vision. So, what does that communicate to you? It means that there is an execution gap and you are trying to close it. Okay? So, three parts of this protocols. The first one is the 3S friction filter, and that's the first phase of our live stream. The 3S friction filter. So, here we're eliminating the silent killers of productivity. Before you can move fast, you have to remove the drag. Before you can move fast, you have to remove the drag. Friction in execution usually comes from three places, and that's from systems, soul, and skill set. Systems, skill, soul, and skill set. That's the 3S friction filter. I'll run through that quickly. Systems, soul, and skill set. So the first is the system friction. Are your tools working against you? For example, a cluttered workspace. Recall that we talked about choice architecture. Like I said, your environment is a big deal. You have to engineer it in such a way that it powers deep focus and execution for you. So IO2 will definitely work against you, or a 15-step login process will work against you. So the action you can take here is to apply the 2 minute rule of setup. Apply the 2 minute rule of setup. So this is how it works. If it takes more than 2 minutes to start a task, the system is broken. It takes more than 2 minutes to start a task, that system is broken. So what does that tell you? You have to limit that time frame to like 2 minutes. So the activation energy is lowered. If you're a chemistry student here, let me see you drop a high in the comments. Activation energy is that energy that we need to kickstart an action or a process. So we want to lower it because hey, you're already dealing with procrastination. You're already dealing with that lethargy. Your limbic system is hijacking the brain. So what do? You lower the activation energy. Make it so simple so it's something you can really execute. Okay? And so if it takes more than 2 minutes to start a task, the system is broken. So what do? You apply the 2 minute rule of setup. Okay? So the next is of our S. Remember we're talking about the 3S friction filter. Systems, soul, and skill set. Moving on to the soul friction now, which is where the resistance comes from your brain. So this is the emotional weight of a task where your amygdala or your limbic system hijacks your brain and then you get into that rabbit hole of procrastination. So often this causes procrastination when a task feels too threatening for your brain. Your PFC shuts down, cortisol is released. Cortisol is that stress hormone that is released, and your PFC shuts down. Your PFC is a thinking part of your brain, and then you get into that rabbit hole of procrastination. So, when a task feels threatening to your identity or ego, what do? You tend to shut down completely and you go into that procrastination loop. So, what can you do? Did you join this neurohacker sprint challenge that I just finished? It started on Wednesday, last week Wednesday, and it ended on Tuesday. If you go to my handle, if you didn't participate, you can run through it 7 days on your own. Get somebody you can be accountable to just to help you break and hack procrastination gradually. Yes? Okay, so that said, label the fear. We're talking about your soul friction now, the resistance that comes from your brain, the amygdala hijack. What do you do? Label the fear. Research shows that labeling reduces the power of the emotional brain. So label that fear. How exactly are you feeling in that moment? And then say to yourself that it's not a big deal. All you can do is lower the activation energy so that it's very easy to start that task. Okay, now we're moving to the third S, which is the skill friction. We're moving to the third S, which is the skill friction. So, do you actually know how to do the next step? Have you outlined the steps? Do you know what to what you're meant to actually do? Do you know the next step to take? Because if you are unaware of this, it's still going to cripple you in that sense. And what you can do here is to identify the micro skill gap. Identify the micro skill gap and you work on that. So, for example, if you want to write a book, practice outlining one sentence or a chapter. So remember that, okay, well, maybe not that way, but for people who have written books, I have written a book before. If you are writing a book, if you get your book cover ready and you're able to outline your chapters, get your chapter summaries, it's easier to run through writing your manuscript that way. So you just take each chapter after the other. Your chapter summary is already there, and then you flesh it out and you run through it gradually. So that's how it works because writing is really, really difficult. Okay, so that's how you break that challenge. That's how you walk through that challenge. So we're moving on to phase two now. I just finished speaking about the 3S fiction filter, which is your systems, your soul, and your skill set. Moving on to the blueprint of three. This is where we're managing the cognitive load. So so the second phase is the blueprint of three. This is where we're working on the cognitive load. We're managing the cognitive load. So your human working memory is in high stress execution, that number drops. So the blueprint of three forces a radical prioritization of your tasks or your goals. So the rule of three outcomes every day define only three must wins, not a list of 20 actions that you need to take. Just define only three must wins, not a list of 20 actions that you need to take. So you would set your 3 hour deep work block. This is where researchers say that LI performance really ace their game. So what did they do? Anders Ericsson on deliberate practice shows that LI performance really work continuously for so long. So you have to re-engineer your deep work around your peak periods. That's working with your biological clock, your circadian rhythm, right? And how you generally function. So the 3 step micro mapping. For every goal, only plan the next 3 steps. For every goal you have to execute, only plan the next 3 steps. That's moving from step 1, 2, 3 up onto 10, depending on the number of steps you have to run through. Step 10, planning step 10 when you haven't done step 1 creates anticipatory fatigue. So you want to make it easy for you. You want to get into that flow, that state. So you're working on your activation energy and you're lowering it so it's easy for you to start. So that said, we are moving on to the third phase now, which is our D.A.R.E protocol, D-A.R.E protocol, the D.A.R.E protocol, and that's the behavioral trigger for instant action. D.A.R.E protocol, D-A.R.E, D for decide, A for anchor, R for reduce, and E for execute. The D.A.R.E protocol, decide, A for anchor, R for reduce, and E for execute. So this protocol is rooted in implementation instructions, the if then planning state, right? Which has been shown in over 100 studies to double the likelihood of goal attainment, right? And if you've read the book by um, If you read or the book Atomic Habits by James Clear, he talks about the implementation. Write the introduction, not I'll work on the. I would write the introduction, not I'll work on the project. The next is our A, which is anchor. Attach the task to an existing habit. Habit stacking. Attach the task to an existing habit. After I pour my coffee, which is your anchor, I would open the document, which is your action. So after I pour the coffee, which is your anchor, I would open the document, which is your action. And then the R, remember we're running through the D.A.R.E protocol, D.A.R.E. The R is reduce, shrink the task until if you can't do 30 minutes, do 3 minutes. The goal is to break the static friction of starting. Your goal is to break the static friction of starting. And then the E, which is the final letter in our D.A.R.E protocol, is execute, move physically. Use the 5-second rule to bypass the brain's hesitation circle. So once you're ready to get into that state, and then your brain goes, gets into that procrastination hole, what do? You move, count 5 seconds, right? Use the 5-second rule to bypass the brain's hesitation circle. Okay, so remember, let's do a quick recap. We're talking about the execution mandate. Okay, I see someone saying, what are you talking about? So, we're talking about the execution mandate, how to stop planning and start doing. And I ran you through three specific filters. The first one is the 3S friction filter, where we talked about systems, your soul set, and your skill set. And then the next is the blueprint of three, where we focused on how to manage the cognitive load. And then the third is the D.A.R.E protocol, which is your behavioral trigger for instant action. And the D.A.R.E protocol is D for decide, A for anchor, R for reduce, and E for execute. So you have a post live stream action activity that you must take. Okay, so for those who didn't join me earlier on, I asked a question that on a scale of 1 to 10, how much of a professional planner are you versus a relentless doer? Drop me your scores in the comments. On a scale of 1 to 10, how much of a professional planner are you versus a relentless doer? Okay, while that is going on, let's run through our post live stream activity. So there are three tasks that you must execute. The first is immediate. So for the next 5 minutes, clear your physical desk of everything except what is needed for your must win. For the next 5 minutes, clear your desk of everything except what is needed for your must win. And then in the next 24 hours, which is short term, complete one 90-minute deep work block using the D.A.R.E protocol. In the next 90 minutes, complete one deep work block using the D.A.R.E protocol. D for decide, A for week. Before we meet next week Wednesday for the next live stream, you're going to perform a friction audit on Sunday. And that is, you're asking the question, which of the three S's this week? Which of the three S's held back the most this week? Remember, the three S's: systems, soul, and skill set. The systems friction, the soul friction, and your set. I'm running through that again. Your system friction is working to ensure that your workspace is designed to engineer focus and execution. So you're applying the 2-minute rule setup. The next is the soul friction, which is resistance. And this is where the amygdala hijack kicks in. So what are you doing? You're labeling that fear so that you reduce the power of your emotional brain. And then the third S is the skill friction. So you're checking to see if to identify the micro skill gap, and you're closing that completely. Okay, so that said, we are going to take our closeout affirmation today. I am not defined by the plans I make, but by the courage I show in taking the first step. I am not defined by the plans I make, but by the courage I take in showing the courage I show in taking the first step. I release the need for perfection and embrace the power of momentum. Today, I choose impact over activity. Your closeout affirmation: I am not defined by the plans I make, but by the courage I take. By the courage I show in taking the first step. I release the need for perfection and embrace the power of momentum plan. Who is excited about the webinar action plan and who is going to run through that? Let me see that in your comments. Thank you all for joining me. Cold Grumpy Tree, Samir Khan, and Raj Q7. Thank you all for joining me today. Do you have any questions? You can drop them in the comments. If you have any questions, you can drop them in the comments so I take that briefly. If you have any comments or any questions, drop that so I take that briefly. Thank you for your time. Okay, let me just wait a few minutes for questions through. Thank you all for joining me today. Okay. Okay, I don't see any questions. Thank you all for joining me today. So until next week, today we talked about the execution gap and how to close it, how to stop planning and start doing, start taking action. And we ran through the three frameworks, three phases. The first was the 3S friction filter, your systems, the system friction, the soul friction, and the skill set friction. And then we talked about the blueprint of three, how to manage the cognitive load. And then the last is the D.A.R.E protocol, which is to the behavioral trigger for instant action. D for decide, you choose the specific task. A for anchor, attach the task to an existing habit. E for reduce, shrink the task until it's impossible to fail. And then E for execute, move physically using the 5-second rule. Thank you for joining me today. Do enjoy the rest of your day. Bye.